It's gonna be sore.
Why didn't go hard?
Have you trying to record yourself?
Oh,
I record
sorry.
all my presentations. Like a quarterback, look at your tape.
Exactly. Don't study.
Whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing today? Come on, how's everyone doing today?
Good.
That's a little bit better. All right, my name's Eddie Tapia, and today I'm presenting my article from the Washington Post. Fast fashion is trying an earth-friendly makeover. Is it real? So basically, this article contains a bunch of different stories about the fast fashion industry and how public opinion has started to shift in a negative light, and people are starting to see them not as this cheap alternative, but actually damaging to the planet. So for those of you that might not be familiar with fast fashion, these are brands such as Shein, Zara, H&M, Primark. These brands have started to get a lot of rise recently and have moved away from creating clothing that is more sustainable and that like you could wear multiple times to kind of cheap and reuse, because fashion trends are moving faster than ever. Instagram, TikTok, all these social media sites constantly are producing new trends and new things, so these fast fashion industries have to keep up. They keep promoting and pumping out as much product as possible, and in turn they're doing it in a very unethical and damaging to the environment. So there's been a lot of contention around these companies. So that brings us to our first point, which is greenwashing. Now, does anybody know what greenwashing is in their own words? You can speak up, guys. If you guys, yeah.
I think it's when the companies, they try to seem more environmental friendly than they actually are, and they try to convince their customers that they actually care more about the environment than they actually do.
Exactly. That's literally pretty much almost the definition. It's the act or practice of making a product or policy appear to be more environmentally friendly and less damaging than it really is. And this is what's happening with a lot of these fast fashion brands. They're saying, hey, we're ethical, hey, we're green, we're recycling, we're doing this, but in reality, they're not. And they're lying to consumers, and it's creating a lot of division in the industry, and they're kind of trying to do damage control recently. The article talks about some of the efforts that these companies are trying to do to show that they're going green and being more environmentally friendly. H&M is focused on investing in offshore wind to power garment manufacturers in Bangladesh. Zara is focused on recycling. They want to produce a line of clothing that's made from recycled materials. And Primark's focusing more on reusing, trying to make sure that their garments could withstand daily wear so you can get more uses out of them. Because as I mentioned previously, a lot of these shirts and stuff, you wear them 2-3 times, they get a hole in them, you throw them away, they end up in a landfill. Now all these efforts sound amazing on paper, but in practice, what's happening is that these companies aren't following through with their demands. We'll start with H&M. H&M wants to invest in offshore wind to help power their garment manufacturers. Does anyone think they're actually going to build wind turbines to power these factories? No, it's going to cost millions and millions of dollars to establish them. There's going to be permits and a bunch of other legal things that you need to go through. So they're just saying that so you click on the headline and say, oh, H&M's doing great, and then you're more likely to buy their clothing. But it's never going to happen. But let's play devil's advocate. What if it does happen? Let's say that they do make these green energy and they're powering the factories in Bangladesh. Well, now they have good, clean, green energy powering a dirty factory in Bangladesh that probably has child labor, bad working conditions, among other things. So clean energy producing a dirty factory that has products that end up in a landfill. It just doesn't make sense. They're not sticking to what they want to do. Zara, on the other hand, wants to do a recycled line of clothing, which sounds good in practice, but they're not actually doing it. There's many lawsuits that have been happening with Zara, particularly in the UK, where they say that their clothes are made with recycled fibers, but it's just not true. They're just blatantly lying to consumers to get you to buy it. Primark, on the other hand, is the only one that I think kind of stands out a little bit. They're trying to test their garments to withstand daily wear a little bit better. I haven't really looked into this. It sounds like a good idea, but they probably are just lying and just putting it on the show so you buy their products. And this is what the main point of fast fashion is they make so much product so quickly that it's very cheap quality and it just deteriorates really fast. This puts them, this brings up the next point, excuse me, that some estimates suggest that making one cotton t-shirt requires more than 700 gallons of water. Just think about that for a second. One single t-shirt like I'm wearing today and you guys are, over 700 gallons of water if it's pure cotton. This infograph on the right kind of shows that in perspective. It's saying about 660 gallons of water for a cotton t-shirt. But look at the top there. A polyester t-shirt apparently requires 92 gallons of water. So what do you think these fashion industry companies are making? Are they making pure 100% cotton t-shirts or polyester?
Yes.
Of course they're gonna go to polyester, right? It's cheaper, it uses less water, it's gonna be better for them. They're gonna make more money, they're putting their profits first, which you have to expect from a company. But they're lying about their practices and lying about their products. And this is what happens, and they go into a vicious circle. They get caught lying about X, Y, Z. They lie, they say, we're going green, we're gonna be recycling more, we're gonna have our employees have better working conditions. What ultimately happens? They get caught lying. They get lawsuits that follow, whistleblowers blow up their company, and then they go into the public opinion and start shifting into a negative light for them. What happens next? They issue an apology. They say, we're so sorry that this happened, it's not gonna happen again. They fire somebody, they claim that they're gonna do better. But ultimately, the same thing happens. They end up repeating, and it just happens year after year, same situations appear. Now this is a really big problem for these companies, but it also gets more complex once you start diving deeper. These are big multinational enterprises. They start in one country, but they're in multiple countries. So their views on ethics are always shifting, and this is where the heart of the problem lies. It relates to global ethics because ethics are not universal. What's ethical here in the States might not be ethical in China, Austria, Europe, South America. They're all different. So this is why a lot of these companies have this hard time trying to distinguish what they should do and be right. From an American perspective, we don't like when our companies lie to us. They do it all the time, but once they get called out for being liars, public opinions start to shift. And this is what's happening with a lot of these countries. Now, what happens when these companies lie? We already talked about that. They lie, they apologize. There's no actual consequence for this. And this is the main part that I've been really thinking about with ethics, is how do ethics get enforced? I've been playing with this kind of thought in my head for the past week, and I couldn't really nail it, but I think this fits it pretty well. Force anchors ethics. Force anchors ethics. Now, what do I mean by that? There's two forces that apply in an ethical situation: the internal force and the external force. Now, I'm going to give a situation that we can all relate to. Cheating on papers here at FAU, right? We know that FAU has a code of academic integrity and an ethical code. You're not allowed to cheat on papers here. So if you're put in a position to cheat on a paper or a test, you have two internal forces driving. The negative internal force that's saying, oh, come on, dude, just pop it into ChatGPT. The answers are up there, AI is getting better, you're gonna get away with it, it's gonna be fine. Then you might have the positive internal force that's saying, no, I don't cheat on my papers, that's not what I do, I have ethics, I'm gonna stay true. So there's always those two forces inside of you that are pulling to which way. Most of the time, we like to say that the good one always finds, but when you go to multiple situations, the negative force sometimes wins. But what happens if those negative forces win? If there's no consequence to anchor into that, people are more likely to choose that negative outcome. This is where the consequence or the external force has to be greater to lock that in. I don't remember if it was this class or another class where we talked about Walmart and they had something with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, where basically they got caught with doing a bunch of wrong, and they had to pay a fine of like hundreds of millions of dollars. But to Walmart, that's like a drop in the bucket. That's nothing. They're way more likely to commit that same act again because the consequence wasn't strong enough. The main point I'm trying to make here is that for ethics to actually be enforced, there has to be an external force and a consequence to actually anchor it down, or I believe people will go to the path of least resistance even if it's unethical. I went over a lot of stuff in this presentation, guys, so I want to conclude with my three main points. First, greenwashing. A lot of these companies, these fast fashion brands, are lying to you. If this is something you care about and you want to be more eco-friendly, I would recommend you guys doing your research, vote with your pocket, buy companies that you trust and that you like. Second, ethics are not universal. What might be ethical in one place isn't going to be ethical in another. So when you're conducting business internationally, it's very important to understand the country that you're doing business with and how they view ethics. And last but not least, force and consequences. Ethics can only be anchored if there is a consequence and an external force to anchor it, or else people are just going to go and choose the path of least resistance. Thank you guys very much for your time. I'd like to open it up for questions, but most importantly, I want to hear your guys' view on ethics. How do you feel? Thank you.
Just to go along with the presentation, I'm
Rachel's gonna be tired of me saying this because I'm always telling her to use this app, but on this topic, there's actually a fashion app that I'm obsessed with, and it is mostly to prevent this type of thing.
Okay.
And it is for higher fashion, it's for like things like Louis Vuitton and Chanel, but there's some lower ones too, like Tory Burch and stuff, but there's like there's just hundreds of these brands, and it's a consignment. And
Okay,
so
yeah.
people, some of them, they range the condition.
Is it like Poshmark?
It's the Real.
It's the Real.
And I've sold like stuff on there, but some of the stuff has never been used. It's got tags on it, and it's like 90% off. But if you scroll down when you're looking at a certain item that's listed, it actually breaks it down like you did on how many gallons of water it saves for you to buy this thing, how many it's all authenticated. It all has like serial numbers, so you know what you're getting is real, and you're doing something good for the environment. And once you buy the piece and you use it and stuff like that, you can also consign it back and sell it again. Even it doesn't matter how bad off it is. Like I'm always trying to encourage people that like I'm really huge on like Goodwill and like the Real and stuff like that because of what you're saying. Like the ethics aren't universal, and it might be easy for us to just swipe our card and have something, but a 6-year-old could have worked 18 hours to make that.
Yeah,
so
no, you're 100%
that's
right.
you have to think about it. But I was just going to share that with you guys in case you wanted to.
No, that's a great idea. No, I love that, and that's a part that I didn't really hang your in too much. Is that a lot of these clothes from the fast fashion, like Shein and stuff, like you get a hole in it, people just throw it away. They don't put it on a consignment app or something. They just get it away, and it becomes trash, and then it's in a landfill, and it takes so long for it to like degrade and stuff. So apps like that are really important, and I've never seen the Real, but I want to check it out because at the bottom it actually tells you like how much went into it.
It does. I am obsessively on it. Like instead of doom scrolling, my husband makes fun of me. Is like I just get on there and heart things, and I'm like I'm fake shopping. Okay, in my mind, if I heart it, it means I bought it, even if I never end up buying it. You know, I put it on my wish list and like whatever. But there's like for instance, it also alerts you when you heart something. It puts it in it would be called a wish list, but it's obsessions. And when it goes on sale, it'll alert you. And so I'll put a heart on something that I'm never gonna be able to get, some $400 jeans. I cannot afford it. And then one day it'll say, hey, your obsession's on sale. It's $12, and I'll get $400 jeans for $12 to help the earth, the planet. And then I'm just like, I win.
That's awesome. No, I love that. That's awesome.
So yeah.
That's perfect. Anybody else?
What's it happening?
The Real.
The Real.
Mm-hmm. Real.
Yeah, please.
If someone, like, let's say somebody was like trying to like argue against this point, and they're saying, well, to what point is a company being ethically wrong versus just having untruthful brands? Because like for example, using Shein as a really good example, I remember when Shein was always around, but it was more popular like in China, overseas, because that's where it started, and it really got popular I think during COVID because of how affordable the clothing was.
Right.
So Shein was like marketing itself as affordable clothes that you can buy and that you can always get more of. So yes, in a sense, they were like, at least at the time, they were being clear that like you're getting cheap stuff.
Right.
You're getting stuff that is probably not gonna last super long, but you know that because you got it for $3.
Exactly.
So to what point is it like? To what point can somebody go up to Shein and be like, well, you're being ethically wrong for saying that your clothes are cheap and they're gonna tear away and just wash away, when that's sort of like how they branded themselves as just cheap clothing.
Exactly. That's the point that I wanted to try to anchor in on the second part, is that like ethics are not universal. So like there's two parts there. There's like your own ethical decision on what you think is okay and what you're willing to buy. And then the second part is what that company is willing to do, promote, buy, and how they operate. They're like two separate things. So in the one hand, you have like your personal ethics, which is like, if you choose to buy this stuff from Shein and you don't care about how it is, that's your own ethical thing. And the background of your ethics come from your whole world experiences, how you view things, that's completely personal. Same thing from the business side, where that business originated in, their practices and all that. They're two individual parts of it. So to like put it together is the hard part. And that's what I was trying to like struggle with, because it's like, you're 100% right. Like my ethics might say it's bad, so I decide to buy from a different brand, but that brand's still gonna be out there and still doing their thing. And in the country that they're in, that might be okay for them to lie about that. But that's kind of the point, is that ethics are not universal, and what's okay over in their country might not be okay for us, and most American consumers don't like to be lied to. So it's like that disconnect, and that's why they're starting to have this makeover where they're trying to promote themselves as being green and eco-friendly, but in reality, they're not. So if they're not, does that bother you as a consumer? Maybe, maybe not. That's the conversation we get to have. Anything else? Yeah.
I mean, I think there's really very small amount of companies, very rarely you can find that are complete 100% not live through, and they don't do anything like their corporate social responsible and everything.
Of
There's
course.
very rare people, like real companies, because like even like there was an IKEA case that with IKEA, but how do you think you can get a t-shirt for $5?
Of course, yeah. Like,
Can
something's
even
gotta
trust
give,
it,
right?
you
Like,
know?
there's gotta be something.
It's
No,
gotta be something.
I completely agree with you. No, I'm with you 100%. I buy stuff off Shein. I shop at H&M. I'm not saying like, don't think I'm standing from the moral high ground and shaking my finger and be like, don't do this, because I'm a part of it. I'm just highlighting that this is the world that we're operating in, and what happens a lot of times is these companies are doing things that might seem unethical to a lot of people, and they do it in the shadows until someone shines a spotlight, and then when they're in the spotlight, they're like, oh no, actually, we're recycling clothes, we're doing all this stuff. That's the only thing. So.
Even about the technology, like, you know, all these lithium batteries, everything, like, most of them are this material, like, this lithium, we're getting from the Africa, right?
Yep.
First Africa, then it's transported to China, it's going
Exactly.
in the Africa, like literally, they are paying $1 or $2 per day to
Probably less.
dig this, probably less, to dig this, you know, lithium from the ground, and after 10 years, they're dying from the lung cancer.
Yep, 100%.
And
You're not
then-
gonna escape
then
it no matter what
if
you do.
Apple is, or maybe Tesla, or whatever, any companies are purchasing these batteries from the China that already made in Africa, and it's like, you know, it's the chain.
Yeah.
And
That-
even I read the research that if everyone would be paid normally for this and everything would be good, the iPhone will cost twice more.
Exactly.
Than the
That
past.
started the point that I wanted to make with the vicious circle, but I centered it around line. But it's the same thing. It's like you're getting it from someplace in Africa that's made with like low income like labor, that's almost slave labor that we talked about in the
Yeah,
IKEA case, right? To go through all these channels to be sold in a first world country for people to complain about it on the first world thing. Like I'm up here in this classroom, I drove to here, I parked and I've been using my phone the whole time, and I'm behind a computer with two big projectors being like, don't buy a $5 t-shirt, right? Like it's hypocritical when you break it down, because like you're not gonna escape this. It's just the world that we live in, but I think it is important to take away like, to look at it and be like, I know what's happening, and at least be conscious about it and try to go around it. There's another company, Patagonia, which actually bothered me. Patagonia started out like normal, like really chasing profits, and then once the owner became a billionaire, they switched up and they're like, okay, the billion, he wants to give everything back and start donating to charity. It's like, that's so much easier to do once you're a billionaire. Like when you were struggling to build Patagonia, you didn't care about that at all. But now that like Patagonia is the #1 brand, you want to reuse and recycle. So it's the hypocritical that I'm talking about. Okay, your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out too, because you were talking about this cycle, I read an article pretty recently about this, and a lot of their struggle too is because they have grown to be these global companies.
Yeah.
And their business model is really not sustainable, because what ends up happening is they're like, okay, like we wanna do this right, and it's like you said, how are you getting a shirt for $3? So they're like, it usually comes from the dirty factory and child labor and stuff like that. So if they wanna change that, they wanna build a safer factory, that costs a bunch of money, they have to get those funds from somewhere. If they wanna pay adults a living wage, that is gonna cost more. So that shirt is now gonna be like $30 or $40. And when the consumer can get that same shirt over at Shein or Temu or whatever else, then they're just gonna lose the customers. So eventually they're just like, okay, this isn't, let's just go back to what we were doing.
Yeah, and let's
it
just say we're building a
perpetuates.
windmill in the middle of the ocean that's gonna power it all, and everyone goes, oh yay, H&M's great now. And that's the exact point I'm making, is like, it's gonna happen, it's gonna think, but lying about it and putting it on the facade is like, it's greenwashing. It's saying that you're being eco-friendly when you're not. Yeah, please.
This is just an example. In one of my data analytics class, we had watched a documentary sort of about this greenwashing, and the most interesting one was about basically the greenwashing of the internet. Because using, like, for example, when we think of Apple, when we think of the iCloud, right?
Mhm.
Our immediate reaction is to look up when internet cables are in the water.
Right.
And they're under the water, they're polluting it. So for example, for Apple, if they changed it from the iCloud to, I don't know, iGrass, I don't know.
The
Just something-
iBunker.
Yeah, the iBunker or something.
The
just something-
mining tool.
Right, just something in there, at some point, like, you subconsciously are going to pay attention to where the internet or the cables are coming from. And they're under the water, they're running through, they're polluting a bunch of places, and you're like, what the heck? Like,
Yeah.
that's how, cause how else do you think when you send an email across the world, it gets there? It doesn't get there in the sky, it gets there under the water.
Yeah.
So it almost opens up to this big conversation of like, wait a minute, like, now my water's polluted and there's that and the thirds, but if you watch like the documentary we watched, they gave us a tour of the data centers.
Okay.
And, you know, on the outside, you know, there's nothing, you can tell when there's a data center, but like, there's nothing on the outside, but when you go inside, it's extremely hot.
Right.
Because they're just using that water to keep the data centers cool, but in the video, the walls are white, the floors are like tile, there's like, eco-friendly electric bikes outside, there's like a communal place for the staff members to use.
Yeah.
Like it gives
It looks
off
great.
it gives off the impression that we are working hard to make this a very light and airy place, because when you go to the back of the data centers, it's hot. And if it's hot, that means you're using water, that means you're using power, that means you're using oil, you're using a bunch of stuff.
Exactly.
And if they show you that, then you start to think like, I wonder how much water you're using actually, and then it creates a problem, so.
Yeah, no, exactly. I love that point. That's really, what was the name of the documentary? Do you remember?
Oh, no, but I can find it though, it was on PBS.
It sounds interesting.
I
That'd be
know.
interesting. Anyone else? Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. Here.
Good job, dude.
Thanks, man.